Welcome to the first narrated slideshow of your online History 141 class. First, we're going to be talking about Mesopotamia. As you can see, I'll be placing timelines on the left of the opening screen on each PowerPoint, and I'll keep them overlapping so that at the end of the module you'll be able to see where all of the different civilizations lined up with each other in time. And then when we do the next module, we'll start the timeline over, and it'll kind of help keep you oriented in time. So first we'll be talking about Mesopotamia, some important dates. In 10,000 BCE, this was the beginnings of agriculture in the Near East. In 5400 BCE was the founding of the world's first city. It was called Eridu. In 5000 BCE to 1750 BCE, this is when the Sumerians settled into the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys, and when the Sumerian element of Mesopotamian culture was most active. In 4500 BCE, the city of Uruk was founded, and in 3600 BCE, that is when writing was invented by the Mesopotamians in Uruk. So let's get started. Mesopotamia, a region comprising modern-day Iraq, sits between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers and is often called the cradle of civilization. Many mistakenly think that this means that the earliest agricultural settlements grew up here and here alone. Others mistakenly believe that the area was home to one centralized culture, and neither of these ideas are accurate. Agricultural settlements emerged on most of the world's continents between 10,000 BCE and 5000 BCE. And many different cultures and empires lived in Mesopotamia, coming and going in the 3rd and 4th century BCE. So, why does it have such an exalted reputation as the cradle of civilization? There are two main reasons for this, and they both occurred in the southernmost region of Mesopotamia, an area called Sumer. They are, one, the establishment of the first city, and it was named Eridu, and this took shape in 5400 BCE. The second reason is the earliest invention of writing sometime around 3600 BCE in a nearby Sumerian city of Uruk. Even though these two things happened first in Sumer, they occurred independently elsewhere shortly after, in India and China especially. So it's important to realize that as various cultures and empires developed in the Mesopotamian region, there were many others who were making similar achievements without any contact or aid from Mesopotamia. Agricultural settlements began early in Mesopotamia around 10,000 BCE because of the incredibly fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This area has been dubbed the Fertile Crescent by archaeologists. Hunter-gatherers roamed the area and they noticed the fertility of the soil early on, so they began static settlements in this place between the Tigris and Euphrates. These small settlements started trading with each other, exchanging goods and ideas. Over the course of 5,000 years, this process continued until the peoples known as Sumerians gathered enough resources that their settlement grew into an urban center, which they called Eridu, and you can see it here at the bottom of this area known as Sumer. Most people in Mesopotamia grew crops or raised livestock, but as urban areas grew, more and more Mesopotamians took on non-agricultural jobs, such as those of healers, weavers, potters, fishermen, priests, whatever. Sumerians were able to develop non-agricultural professions because of having a surplus of crops. People weren't just farming to live; they were farming to live and to sell, and so people could buy food instead of farming it and those people who bought food could do other things like weave. The Sumerians continued to work at agriculture and trade with their neighbors, and they accumulated more and more resources and founded more and more cities. As you can see, Uruk, Lagash, Kish, Nippur, these are all cities in Sumer. By 3600 BCE, the Sumerians had developed a writing system. It became necessary for them to document long-distance and large-scale business transactions as their enterprises grew, so they started recording these things. This script is called Cuneiform, which means wedges because of its wedge shapes. This writing system started out as a pictorial system, meaning it was made up of pictures that represented certain nouns, adjectives, or verbs. Over time, the language became more sophisticated. By the end of the period, cuneiform was no longer pictorial. It became phonetic, meaning certain shapes represented certain sounds, like in our alphabet. It also became partially semantic, which means that shapes represented certain meanings or concepts. And this is like how maybe Chinese characters function today. The cultures living in Mesopotamia shared common religious beliefs. They believed that the foundation of their civilization was the result of the gods triumphing over chaos. As they worked alongside the gods to maintain good order, they were doing so against the powerful force of chaos. So they considered themselves as kind of helping the gods to control chaos. Mesopotamians constructed temples in the center of each city. These temples were dedicated to the city's patron deity. Each Mesopotamian city was believed to be protected by a deity with whom it had a special relationship. Cities could also have religious significance themselves. Seeking to explain the rise of such a large urban center in a world with no other cities, the Sumerians incorporated Eridu, the first city, into their founding mythology, calling it the home of the gods. Affluent citizens lived in homes made of mud bricks, which were painted colorfully. Poorer Mesopotamians lived in simpler homes made of bundled reeds. The Mesopotamians created the world's first pyramids using the same baked mud bricks they would have used for their homes. Ziggurats were constructed in a stepped style, unlike the smooth pyramids of the Egyptians. The Mesopotamians likely used these structures for religious purposes, but we're not sure what exactly they did there or why they were built. We do know that they don't mark a massive tomb complex like the Egyptian pyramids do. These contained many incredible feats of engineering, such as working ventilation holes and drains. The Mesopotamians clearly understood architectural and engineering principles well. Governing bodies in Mesopotamia were initially run by priest rulers in the early days. Priest rulers received divine messages and omens which guided their rulership. After 3600 BCE, this is right around the time of when writing was invented as well, several small kingdoms emerged in the area, and by the first millennium BCE, Mesopotamia was populated with strong, centralized kingdoms. One such kingdom was Babylon, pictured here. Babylon was a city-state located in an area that was now about 60 miles south from the city of Baghdad in Iraq. It's one of the best-known Mesopotamian kingdoms because it's mentioned often in the Bible. Its most powerful king was Hammurabi, who ruled from 1792 BCE to 1750 BCE. He funded public works and was particularly talented at diplomacy with other rulers. He also commanded an effective army, conquering all of southern Mesopotamia and parts of the north. Hammurabi's legal codes were sophisticated and complex, and they were posted publicly in the city. This is how code survives today. They're carved into stone pillars that functioned as billboards. Like most Mesopotamian kings, Hammurabi ruled his small kingdom personally without a bureaucracy to help him run the state. Even as his kingdom grew, he devoted considerable efforts to maintaining law and order in the regions under his control. That's all I have for you today on Mesopotamia. Please make sure that you finish the rest of the Mesopotamia part of the module. This includes reading the Code of Hammurabi, and it's linked in your learning module. Be sure to read my introductory blurb as well. Listen to the Ancient World podcast episode titled Wherever I Went, Let Him Go. I think it's about 20-25 minutes long. And just a note for the rest of the course, always read my blurbs introducing course materials. I have really carefully vetted these materials. I know them really well. I've used them in other courses. If you could, please just make sure you always read those blurbs. I will kind of set up where I'm getting this document, if it's a primary source, if it's a secondary source, and I also set up what I want you to be looking for in these materials, and that'll be really helpful on your end of the module quiz.